Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and yesterday afternoon it was the weirdest thing. I was standing on my front porch, and we had all these people in our yard. We were having a get together, and everybody was exactly 6 feet apart, and it was the most strange looking thing to look out off of my front porch and to see 10 or 15 people, and every one of them is 6 feet apart. It was pretty wild. This is a bizarro world we live in now. But anyway, hopefully this will be over soon. Now, today, again, I'm taking you down the road of, I wanted to go back, and this is what I'm doing. See, now that I've been on YouTube and in Twitter for the last 2 years or so, there's a lot of things that when I first started, I either didn't know or didn't put together in my mind. But now that I've read so many things and seen so much, to me, it is fascinating to go back and look at what things that people said, or things that Ripple said, things that I covered that I didn't piece together in my mind back then. And I've been talking about some of these deleted accounts. I'm going to talk some more about the Rachel Lee account today. Someone brought something else to my attention, but I think that all of these things I'm going to show you will be pretty fascinating. But first, I wanted to show you, I've told you for a while here, I know Brad Combs has said it, I've talked to Mr. B about it, but to me, it's a very obvious thing. This is common sense. When all of this happens with Ripple, the XRP ledger, these whatever you call them, validator nodes or whatever. I'm not a techie, but I understand the gist of it. When this happens, the obvious common sense thing that you're going to see happen is going to be for the people that have skin in the game. These banks and payment companies that are working with Ripple are going to run their own nodes. And that's why I've talked about before about how they're going to light up like a Christmas tree. Well, this is the first time, this clip from Bank XRP and you can subscribe to him on YouTube. This clip from Bank XRP that I played for you yesterday, I want to make sure you all got it, because this is Ryan Zagone, who was early at Ripple. He was the guy that was going around all over the world trying to handle the regulators and talk to the regulators about what needed to happen. So listen to what he says. He tells you point blank how this is going down.
Quick question here. Is there a validator node that monitors all transactions on the network? And we saw on that previous slide about the validator would confirm that the good funds are available and send the confirmation back to the banks. Each bank will have its own validator. This gives each pair of banks control over the validator they pick on the network. There's not one validator on Ripple, but many validators. So Bank A and Bank B might choose to have one validator, but Bank C and Bank D will have a different validator. So this gives what this does is provides. There's not one single point of failure. There's not one single validator, but many validators. So that if something does happen to one validator, other banks using different validators can continue to make transactions. This adds operational resiliency to the solution by having multiple types of validators.
Okay, I'll take it a step further, and I'll tell you right now, it's not just going to be banks. Now think about this for a minute. Once you have this set up, JP Morgan no longer has to trust Goldman Sachs. But let's take it a step further. Central banks don't have to trust other central banks. China does not have to trust the United States. Imagine a world, this is where we're going, folks. I don't care what anybody says. This is what it's going to look like. Banks are going to have their own nodes. The SEC will show you that clip right here. I said it this morning. They've told you the truth all along. You don't see them now, but you will. When ready, this network will light up like Clark Griswold's house on Christmas when the lights are finally plugged in. That's a reference to the Christmas Vacation that all of you I know have seen. This is Stuart Alderati, Ripple's General Counsel, who used to always also work for Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary of the United States. Listen to what he says.
XRP sits, as I said, on an open, permissionless ledger. How do I know that it's open and permissionless? Because the Chief Technology Officer at Ripple tells me it is. He explains it to me, but I also have hard evidence. The SEC announced about a month or two ago that they're going to establish a node on the XRP ledger and other open and permissionless ledgers. The SEC didn't call Ripple to ask permission to do that. They're just going to do that.
So imagine this world where it's going to be banks, it's going to be central banks, it's going to be government organizations in countries around the world. That is how we can live in a world, in financial world, where people don't have to trust other people. That's what this is all about. And it's a no-brainer. But as I say here, they've told you the truth all along. Remember, this is Brad Garlinghouse telling you the truth. Congrats, Kahina Van Dyke. She went to Standard Chartered when she left Ripple. She goes to Standard Chartered, and he says, we're glad you'll only be a node on the network away. He was telling you, I mean, they can only say so much to you folks, but he's telling you right there, plain as day. All right, now let's keep going down our rabbit hole. Crypto Penny today made me aware of this, and I did not know it. For those of you who don't know or remember, Rachel Lee, we've talked about Rachel Lee, is the deleted Twitter account. Rachel Lee, and I was saying back then I thought that it was tinfoil hat stuff. Now, and I'm not saying when I say that, I'm not saying I agree with every single word that Rachel Lee, whoever that is, said. But I am saying that some of the things that were said, I'm convinced that this person running this account knew something. In fact, she said she had a source on more than one occasion. For those of you that don't know or remember, Rachel Lee had another Twitter account before she opened before she opened this one that's closed. This one is still active, but maybe not for long. So we'll see. Let's check and see if it stays active for long. And this one is Lee R9991. I went and checked it out, and he's right. She did have this account, but look at this tweet that he's showing you. She said in this account, Ripple's reason for I don't know what this D is, but it's instead of saying V, she says D. For D, 55 billion escrow is for public consumption. When D, potential of XRP, was realized in 2016, there was a rush to lock up D lion's share of XRP out of fear that if D potential was fully realized, D public would rush in. 55 billion is for institutions, big players. Some of you smart people out there, I would like to know why she's putting that D there. Somebody out there probably can figure that out or already knows. But anyway, this is look, even Ripple says it, by securing the lion's share of XRP in escrow, people can now mathematically verify the maximum supply, They were trying to create trust that they weren't going to manipulate the prices and dump it and all that type of thing. But this is an interesting tweet. So I went and I looked around on that other Twitter account. Here's another thing she said. Understand one thing about Ripple XRP. There's never going to be a gradual rise to D top. What is this D thing? It's going to be an overnight mass adoption so as not to allow the entire world to stock up on XRP. We all can't be millionaires, billionaires. SBI launch was delayed for big players to catch up. And she's tweeting this from this Murray Rothbard. Let me see who this is. Let's see. I don't follow that person, but I do now. XRP will face drastic change ahead. This summer is bound to be especially important because of the launch of SBI exchange covering all Japan, the second most enthusiastic nation in the world for cryptocurrency, speculation, and investment. Okay, so now moving along, I wanted to show you this. I found another. I mentioned this one yesterday. This is another place where I found where someone had taken what she had said on Twitter and put it into XRP chat. So let me go through this. You know what? It'll be easier. Well, I can do it like this. I've been asked to shed some light on my opinion surrounding XRP and the IMF. We all know the story about Ripple, Chris Larsen, IMF, so we won't go into that again. Let's look at the fundamentals behind why I believe XRP has a greater role to play in the global economy. Currently, the IMF issues what they call SDR, special drawing rights, These are issued to financially troubled nations as a means to provide them liquidity to help get them out of sticky situations. This is what's going on right now in the world, by the way, folks. The SDR is backed by nothing. It has no real value like fiat money. Since the SDR is backed by nothing and has no real value, the IMF uses basket of worthless fiat currencies to determine a value for these SDRs. We look around the world today and we see the US dollar as king. Global currencies are unstable. Emerging markets who borrowed dollars on the cheap back in 2008 to the financial crisis days are now finding it difficult to pay back their debts due to the strong dollar. This is causing currency inflation problems for multiple nations as nations print more money to keep up. The US dollar is being used as a tool to do exactly what we see being done today. Donald Trump is just another globalist who is in on what's going on. These trade wars are meant to cause chaos. It's meant to cause a currency crisis globally. More and more nations are seeking to walk away from the US dollar and conduct their trades in their own currencies. I hope you can see where this is headed. If you can't, this means the US dollar as a global reserve currency used for trade is being dropped. As the US dollar fades from being used in trade between multiple nations, a new system would need to step up and step in to bridge the gap. This is where Ripple and XRP come in, and this is why the globalists are all over this project. What you see is by design, not accident. SWIFT has two options: die off like the US dollar reserve status or hook up with Ripple Tech and survive. SWIFT is already on board with Ripple. Do your research, connect the dots. There's no other way. SWIFT survives what's coming. The US dollar reserve status keeps SWIFT alive. Coming back to the IMF and the global liquidity crisis that's unfolding, the IMF, as we all know, is just another globalist organization, just like the U.S. Federal Reserve. They are all interconnected and they are all over Ripple. The IMF is not going to use gold and silver in any new monetary system or deliverance of liquidity. They may have been for deliverance of liquidity. What they may do is ask nations to hand over gold in return for XRP. XRP value is going to be significantly higher from where it is now, and that can occur overnight. It won't take much once XRapid is live. It's now ODL. Ripple are already well positioned at the end stages. Brad Garlinghouse talks about the marathon. We are at the final leg. Ripple, being a globalist company, has no use for the XRP in escrow. They can't distribute it amongst themselves. Everyone already has their allocations of XRP. The rest is for the IMF or whichever globalist bank takes over to re-liquidify the world. 50 billion XRP in escrow, for example, at $1,000 per XRP will position the IMF in the perfect position to re-liquefy the world, as well as ask nations to hand over their gold for XRP. Do you think Ripple is successful on their own? Of course not. They need the tech. They need the tech and the blessings. Some people ask a silly question or make a silly statement like, why would the IMF buy XRP from Ripple or force Ripple to hand it over? It doesn't work like that. Ripple is creating digital gold with the help of the globalists. That's just part of the deal. Hand it over. Chris Larsen and Arthur Brito get to be trillionaires. Others get to be multi-billionaires, and you and I get to keep a slice of the pie as well. Ripple has no other use for the 50 billion XRP escrow. All you have to do is sit back and watch it all play out like a movie. This is just my opinion. Do your own research. Don't invest more than you can afford to lose. Keep an open mind. Think outside the box. There is no artificial intelligence with Ripple and XRP. We are entering a new age. I hope you are ready. I found that right up fascinating, folks. And then there was this, just to show you that she was talking, or said she was talking to Ripple people. During a discussion with an ex-Ripple employee, doesn't want to be named, utility assets like XRP will be valued differently from current coin, and this is from the one that's been deleted, current coin market cap nonsense of market cap supply. This will change soon. Daily update of actual supply, not in escrow or wallets volume. And then CoinMarketCap did change their algorithm, I remember, and they did it later. So this was kind of, I don't know if it was the exact thing she was saying. But any of you out there who can help me solve this mystery, if Rachel Lee has created another account on Twitter, you're going to see words mean things, folks, and language means things. If she used this D in her tweets, you'll see that pattern again if she created another Twitter account. So anybody that can spot anything like that, let me know. We'll jump on that like a cheap suit. All right. Next, I decided another fascinating character who never tweeted much, never said much, was Ryan Zagone. He no longer works for Ripple, but I went down the road. I wanted to look back at some of Ryan Zagone's older tweets and see the type things he was saying and what he was tweeting out. So the rest of this video, a lot of it came from offshoots of where it led me looking at his tweets. The first thing is here. In case you missed it, great recording of foreign affairs. What is foreign affairs? In-depth analysis of international affairs and U.S. foreign policy since 1922. Cryptocurrency event. Now, who this is, the woman that I talked about yesterday, who also, she deleted her Twitter account. Karen Giffords, she was one of the early people at Ripple, as early as 2015, 16. This is her on stage at this. I was going to let you hear just a little bit of this.
There's proof of work. There's actual mining and electricity and hard costs that go into securing that network. And that creates real value in that token, right? That token means something. It means I can access this network, I can sign an instruction, and that instruction can operate on the blockchain. That means something to people. And it will become, hopefully, and the speculators believe that access and that instruction setting will become more valuable over time.
By the way, this is from February of 2015. It gives you a good idea of what they were thinking about, how they were approaching this.
Ripple is a little bit different.
Yeah, and I'd agree with many of the things that you're saying.
Yeah.
I do have a somewhat different perspective, and again, I think this comes a little bit from my Fed background and just like thinking about money a lot. But
Fed background.
Huh?
No, it was
You've got mail.
Okay.
phone.
She just said something I didn't even know, folks. She said she has a Fed background. You remember who else had a background at the Treasury of the United States? Greg Kidd. Remember that?
Yeah.
Oh, was it a You've Got Mail? Oh, that's cute. So
We are at a tech conference, right? I mean, I didn't know it was like 10 years ago.
We were talking about closed proprietary
well,
networks
tech
versus...
and money, we'd be talking 10 years ago. But so just to circle back to what we were talking about is the intrinsic value of these virtual assets, right? So you can think of so what is the value of the money that we think of as fiat currency, right? Like you could say it has no intrinsic value either, right? But we are very comfortable with the idea that it does have value. And so where does that value come from? There's at least two places, and I'm happy for people to offer more, but one is as a store of value, and one is as a means of transacting. And just the way, this is just my personal way of thinking about this, but if you think about Bitcoin being created, it was the first virtual asset. It was the first asset that could exist electronically. And it's really, a great store of value and does that well. And if you analogize it kind of to gold a little bit, gold is a great store of value. Gold, the value of gold goes up in times of uncertainty. Bitcoin was created in times of uncertainty. It was created close to the time of the financial crisis. And it's gold is volatile, Bitcoin's volatile. But it doesn't mean that it's valueless. It just means that it's serving a certain function, and it's kind of optimized for that. It's not. It's a little clunky to transact with. Gold's a little clunky to transact with, but people do it all the time. With the virtual asset that's part of the Ripple protocol, we call it XRP. So XRP just serves a couple of functions that make the protocol work well. One is that it is the source of the fee for transacting. So a small amount of XRP is destroyed every time you transact. The purpose of that is to discourage spamming attacks. That it's designed to feel free to the person who's transacting legitimately, but if you're trying to do a denial of service attack, it will become rapidly too expensive to do. It also serves as a bridge currency between other currencies. So enhances the interoperability of the protocol. So when I look at XRP, I think of it as more analogous to something like the dollar, which is kind of optimized for transacting. If you think about how people use the dollar, like if you get a bunch of gold, you put it in a vault. If you get a bunch of dollars, you don't hold on to them. You pretty much quickly, start transacting in them. You don't really, most people don't put a lot of dollars in a vault. They start investing them or they trade them for other things. And the value of the dollar is really related to, how useful it is for transacting. So that's just like my personal way I think about these two apps.
All right. I just wanted you to give you a little idea of what she was like and where she was coming from, where Ripple was coming from early on. Okay, I was also looking around at other things. People have disappeared. The Shane Ellis guy, I don't even know if I've ever talked about him on this channel, but for those of you that want to go look, I don't think his account's live anymore, at Shane Ellis CEO. He says, right, keep the price as low as possible for as long as possible. Instos buy as much as possible. Before rocketing the price to keep as many people out. They did it with .com. They will do it again. And then Mr. B replied and said, hey, Shane, are you the guy who did the paper? I have it saved, but I haven't read it yet. Can you share your background? Thank you. And he says, I worked for the UK government, and this account disappeared as well. And this guy obviously knew a lot of things about what was going on. Now, this is one of the things that Ryan Zagon's Twitter feed led me to, is Dan Morgan, and I wanted to remind people of something. And by the way, before I forget, remember, we now have Karen Gifford. She said she worked at the Fed before she was at Ripple, and Greg Kidd, who was also he was an investor and also one of the first people at Ripple. He's the one that said that they went straight to the Treasury when they started to start working with the Treasury. And I thought at the time, who goes straight to the Treasury? It's not like I can just go straight to the Treasury and just walk in the door. But he did. And then when I looked at his background, I can't remember. He either worked for the Federal Reserve or the Treasury before he worked for Ripple. So that's two that were there early. Okay. And then this Dan Morgan guy, this was a tweet Ryan Zagon had retweeted, and I want to show it to you for two reasons. First, to show you how close Ripple was working with the Bank of England. Thanks, Bank of England and the FCA, which is the Financial Conduct Authority. And this is back November 28, 2018, for supporting the Ripple and the InFin, Innovative Finance, Crypto Assets Roundtable this morning. Hugely informative. Great to hear from you, engaged industry audience. And then this is these guys apparently this is the Bank of England in the UK. All right. But when I saw this, I couldn't remember if Dan Morgan had also left Ripple. So I went to look at his resume, and yes, Dan Morgan is yet another person and a lot of them are from the regulatory side that were working on the regulatory side. Don't think that's a coincidence. He was at Ripple until January 2020, and now he's at Plaid, policy lead in Europe. And so I was sitting there thinking, well, who else has left? Miguel Valles just left, right? Ryan Zagon left. Dilip Rao left. Evan Schwartz left. Dan Morgan left. Catherine Coley left. Kahina Van Dyke left. And then Miguel Valles recently has left as well. The only person who has not left is David Schwartz. And I don't want to say it because we don't want him to go anywhere yet. Okay, so, and this is other stuff in Ryan Zagon's feed. I'm going to get to something really interesting here in a minute. And I was led there too. Ripple's Chris Larson, this is back in 2015. Chris Larson on stage, Ripple, making the Internet of Value a reality. I just thought that was interesting, an early thing with Chris Larson. And this one also is an early thing. This article could not be found. Maybe somebody out there can find it. McKinsey explores how Ripple is building the Internet of Value. And this was an article that was written on Ripple when they called it Ripple Labs. Now, this led me to this tweet. I saw in one of Ryan Zagon's tweets, he had put this handle. This is the original Ripple handle when they were called Ripple Labs. This is the Twitter handle that they had, and it's still live. So I decided to go down through it. And one of the things that caught my interest, remember, we've talked a lot about Bank of New York Mellon, BNY Mellon. I believe is from the financial crisis until today, BNY Mellon and BlackRock and a handful of other companies are a huge part of why Ripple has gotten to where it's gotten and where it's going. But I think BNY Mellon is the core cog in the wheel. Well, this I thought was kind of random. In 2015, now remember they had a write-up from BNY Mellon in 2016, I believe, too. But I always wondered, why do they keep talking about BNY Mellon? There's nowhere does it say that BNY Mellon is like an investor in Ripple, but BNY Mellon, they seem to know, and I'm going to show you some other things here. So here's the article. This is from 2015. It's a Q&A that Ripple is interviewing this Cheryl Gers. Competition makes you stronger. They're interviewing her as if they're working with her, but it's kind of random. I just want to read this part. What was the catalyst? Was there a specific wake-up call or aha moment? Initially, we definitely focused on Bitcoin, but we quickly expanded our attention to include any kind of blockchain technology that cascaded from the conversation that Bitcoin originally sparked, which of course includes Ripple and other protocols for settling payments. Going forward, we are now working to determine how these emerging technologies may help us deliver better products and services to our clients. This conversation is still in its infancy. It's going to be a journey, or what Brad Garlinghouse calls a marathon, right? So I got on this BNY Mellon thing again, and it reminded me of it led me to this. I typed in this Cheryl Gertz and Ripple, okay, on Google, and this popped up. BNY Mellon, Cheryl Gertz, competition makes you stronger. Now, you'll remember Matthew Mellon. You'll remember the stories back when Matthew Mellon was some huge holder of XRP, right? And he died. He died of I think the story was a drug overdose or whatever. Well, I'd always wondered, how did I assumed that Matthew Mellon had found out about XRP because his family is BNY Mellon, and that he probably found out that BNY Mellon was exploring blockchain technology, and he found out about XRP. So I thought that he was like an outside guy looking at it or whatever. I never heard this before, and maybe I missed something. Obviously, I missed something. But someone replies to this thread right here, and they say, given that Matthew Mellon is one of the Ripple advisors, it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to think that BNY Mellon is experimenting with Ripple. I had never heard this. He's one of Ripple's advisors. Well, if he's one of Ripple's advisors, they didn't formally announce it. So I went to look and see if I could find anywhere in any article where it mentions officially that he is an advisor to Ripple and not just some guy that found XRP, and I found it. April 17th, 2018. And again, this may just be something I missed totally, but right down here, they come out and say it. This is a CNBC article. Most recently, is an advisor for the digital currency company Ripple Labs. So he was an advisor to Ripple. Now, that's interesting because a lot of their advisors are on their website. Most of them that have been advisors, there was an announcement, there was an article, there was a write-up, but not this guy. And then that reminded me that I've shown you this on this channel before, The Last Days of Banking Era, Matthew Mellon. And in this article, they talk about what we knew. In addition to leaving behind 3 children, his death raises many unanswered questions, including what will happen to the estimated $500 million of XRP digital currency he owned. Mellon's XRP had been worth well over $1 billion earlier in 2018. He had told Forbes in March he had been adding to the position as the price plunged. XRP is the digital currency of financial payments company Ripple, and Melon had acquired a large amount of it, mostly from an initial investment of about $2 million prior to the boom. Melon said he kept the digital keys to his XRP locked in cold storage in other people's names at various locations around the U.S. Now, folks, if you think that this XRP is somewhere never to be found again, then you think again. Any of you who, like me, have been in this game for a while and you've gone through the process, whether it's a Ledger Nano S or storing it on Coinbase or wherever, you're not going to sit. I mean, if he put this, as he says here, kept the digital keys to his XRP locked in cold storage in other people's names at various locations, you better believe that XRP has not been lost at all. People have that XRP and they've got it locked up around the country the way he says, in cold storage. This is not lost XRP. That's one point I wanted to make. But the other point I wanted to make is, now that I know that he was an advisor to Ripple, it makes this make a lot more sense. Right here, he reportedly spent a lot of time with Kik Kennedy, daughter of Robert F. Kennedy. In late March, Melon told a Forbes reporter he dined with President Donald Trump. I shared with him that he should become blockchain friendly if he wants the next millennial vote, Melon told Forbes in late March. So if you assume that in late March, which would be late March, where was this article, 2018, you have to wonder when he actually talked to Donald Trump. But you also have to wonder if this Ken Kerson appointment to the board of directors at Ripple in February 23rd of 2017 had anything to do with that connection, a Ripple advisor, Melon, who could get in a room with Trump. Not all of us could. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button, and tell your friends and family that Rachel Lee had 2 accounts, and one of them, at least while I'm doing this video, is still live. Maybe by the end of the day it won't be. Thanks for listening.